Good afternoon. I hope everybody is having a wonderful Wednesday. We look forward to sharing our virtual field trip to a Christmas tree farm today. We will be at Rocking Horse Farm with farmer Julie Liebmann. We're very excited to share this Christmas tree virtual field trip. So as people are starting to filter in and get signed in and situated, I wanted just to share a map of New York. Rocking Horse Farm is in Jamesville, New York, which is in Onondaga County. So you look right there in central New York, pretty much in the heart of New York, you can see the gold star. That's where Rocking Horse Farm is. And if you just take a look and try to identify where you are in the state, and think about that place, and as a placeholder where we're at. So we're in central New York, not too far from Syracuse, New York, little north of Ithaca and Cornell. With that, I look forward to sharing our virtual field trip with you. So, Julie, how are you today?
I am very well. How are you?
Doing well.
I hope everybody's doing super well.
So, can you share a little bit about your farm with us?
Sure. We are a Christmas tree farm. If you think about a farm, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a dairy farm. There's all sorts of farms for pigs, for sheep, for vegetables, for flowers. We happen to have a Christmas tree farm here where we grow Christmas trees. We also have an apple orchard on our property. And we do a couple other things. We raise alpacas and we have an event barn on our property. So we do a bit of a few different things to help not put what you would say all our eggs in one basket. And we have a lot of fun out here.
And as our friends from across the state are starting to enter in, so if you have any questions of Julie, we'll try to relay as many questions as we can to Julie throughout the experience. Just put those questions in the Q&A, and like I said, we'll try to answer and share as many as we can. So, Julie, can you tell us a little bit about Rocking Horse Farm? When did you get started? How did you get started?
Well, I always loved horticulture, the study of plants, and went to college for it. And then also wanted to get into growing trees and various stuff. So we settled on Christmas trees. I've been out here for 35 years. We started the farm, had our first planting 35 years ago. So we've had many plantings since then. Most of the original trees are gone, but a lot of trees have followed suit. And we've continued to improve and grow the farm. Used to be a cattle farm long before us, but now it's we've changed it and doing our own kind of farming.
So you mentioned doing a lot of planning. So where do we start with planting a Christmas tree? We see a looks like a Christmas tree forest behind you. I'm sure that those trees did not arrive on your farm like that. How do they get there? How did that farm?
Well, a tree starts out from a cone. This is a cone off of a spruce tree or pine tree. All these little spots will contain little seeds in there. And when these open up like this, the seeds fall out. In a forest, they would go on the ground, they would germinate and start to grow. In a Christmas tree farm, what happens is a nursery that likes to grow young plants will take the seeds and they'll grow them. And the first year, they'll be about this big. The second year, they'll be about this big. And then they'll grow them on until what we call transplants, which is when I buy them. They're about 4 to 5 years old. Then I will buy a small plant. This one's been in here a couple of years. So this is a transplant, a young plant, probably 5 years old. Then I will grow them from here on in the field because a very young little one in our fields, it's tough for them to survive. So they have special nurseries for the babies. Once they get 4, 5, 6 years old and we buy them, they're called transplants. We put them into the field like this in the rows, and then they grow until they get to be a good size. So they will grow approximately a foot a year. And if you look at a tree, you will see a whorl of branches here and a whorl of branches here. This is how much it grew that year. The next year, it went up to here. So each tree will grow approximately 12 inches a year. So a Christmas tree will take anywhere from 7 to 10 years to get from little size to what we call marketable size, ready to be cut.
Now, when you're planting the trees, do you use any machinery or is that all, are all those trees planted by hand?
We've done everything over the years. We've planted by hand. We now go down through the rows. We have a little mini excavator with an auger. It looks like a big drill bit. And we go down and we drill new holes where the new trees will grow. And then we go in, we hand plant in each of those holes. There, we also have what's called a tree planter. If you look up a Christmas tree planter, it is towed behind my tractor. It makes a ditch. We put the tree in and then it closes up the ditch behind us. So that's if we're planting an entire row of new baby trees. We can do it that way. It's a lot faster.
So I have a great question from Mrs. Shoup's fourth grade class, and we see a bunch of different trees behind you. What kind of trees do we have on your Christmas tree farm, and what is the most popular kind of tree?
Well, we have three basic kinds of trees. We have a fir tree, a spruce tree, and a pine tree. Fir trees are short needled. This is a fir. They have very soft needles, and if you crush their needles, they have a very piney scent to them. So they're very fragrant. We have some spruce trees. Where's a spruce tree? Well, there's one further in. They have similar needles, a little bit more prickly, not the nice fragrance that the fir have, but they have stiffer branches. And then the other kind, which I don't have any small ones, but this one up here is a very large pine tree. And if you can tell, the needles are very, very long on pine trees, and they are very soft. They also have very weak branches, so they're really only good for lightweight ornaments. So we primarily have fir and spruce here on the farm.
And what's the most popular tree that you sell?
A fir tree is the most popular because it smells so good. It's nice and soft, and its longevity in holding its needles once it's cut. So I would say a fir.
And you mentioned that the trees behind you, many of them are 6 to 12 years old. Mrs. I's class wants to know, what's the biggest tree you've ever grown?
That we've cut for a Christmas tree, 15 feet. That was a big one.
And I got a great question from Mrs. K's class, and they want to know, why Rocking Horse Farm?
I love horses, always loved horses, and it was just kind of a play on that. My husband came up with the name.
And a great question from Rose. She wants to know, what is your favorite kind of tree?
My personal favorite is called a concolor or white fir. I can't grow them here. My site does not support them, but they have a whitish colored, grayish colored needle. And when you crush them, they smell like citrus, like oranges. I love them. I wish I could grow them, but you have to grow the trees that will grow on your site. You can't just plant anything anywhere you want. You got to check your soils, you got to check your water, lots of different stuff, and determine what's going to do well on your site.
In looking at your field and thinking of a farm, as many of us think of a farm, are there a lot of things that you have to do within the season to maintain these trees, as far as watering, providing
There,
nutrients?
there is some. We really only have to water the babies when we put them in if we get into a drought situation. We plant them in early April, and typically there's enough moisture in the soil that they can get established and do fine. If we get a bad drought, yes, I've gone out and watered all the babies, and it's a big job. But if we get lucky, then Mother Nature takes care of it. Other than that, there's mowing. You can tell my husband does all the mowing. The rows have to be mowed about every 2 to 3 weeks. We like them to be kept cut down so the weeds don't compete with soil, nutrients, and water, and keep it cleaner. There's shearing that has to be done in August, September, October, depending on our time frame, that helps to shape the trees. If you can see, they kind of look like big upside down ice cream cones. That they don't just grow that way by themselves. If you never touched them, they'd be very long and thin and leggy. By shearing them, we make them denser or thicker, more branches in here. So we shear them every year and do some corrective pruning on them if we have to fix something that's going a little askew, which happens, like all of us.
Thinking of that maintenance, and we have a couple great questions about the ecosystem and the Christmas tree farm. Are there concerns that you might have as far as animals damaging the trees? Are there things that you have to do to protect those trees?
That's a really good question because we have had a problem. About 4 years ago, we'll take a little stroll down here. We had deer come in. We had a lot of snow on the ground. There was nothing for them to eat, so they will eat whatever they can find. And they came in and they ate the bottom 4 feet of all these fir trees that are throughout the farm. And you can see one over there that got stripped absolutely bare. What can we do to help fix that? They can be sprayed with the deer deterrent, or I have one field, my other field that's my east field, I call it. We're going to be putting up a deer fence around the entire field because it can just be very tough to prevent if they're really hungry, and it will just keep them out. And a deer fence is a fence that's 8 feet high because a deer can jump a 7-foot fence. 8 feet is just a hair too high. So that's the size fence we will put around that entire field, which is about 5 acres. So it's going to be a lot, but then I can sleep at night because I know that they can't get to them. Other animals, not so much. Some of the little trees sometimes might get eaten by mice or voles in the winter if they're really hungry, but we have not had too much problem with that.
I have quite a few questions about the size of your farm. So we have a lot of classrooms that are curious about how many acres you might be farming, as well as how many trees you might plant.
Well, we have 12 acres of Christmas trees and 5 acres of apples. How many trees I have currently on the farm, I have no idea because they're in all stages of growth. But I put in about 700 to 1,000 baby trees every year. And I plant where another tree has been. So for example, we have a stump here. This spring, I'll be putting a tree next to it. So we plant where there was a tree that was cut. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. So, okay.
Well, that leads
we have a lot of trees. Yeah.
Yeah, it leads us to another great question that our classrooms are interested in is about how many trees do you sell in a Christmas season? And what is that season of selling trees?
The season of selling trees typically for us is the week before Thanksgiving through Christmas Eve. How many trees? We sell between 300 and 500 trees. We plant up 700 to 1,000 because some of them don't survive. Depending on the year, we've had a 10% loss, which is not bad. We've had a few years where we've had a 50% loss due to drought. So, we have to play with Mother Nature and we do the best we can.
We have many students who may have never had a real Christmas tree. So if I came to a farm like yours, how would I go about getting a Christmas tree? Where would I start? Do I go in the field and just pick one out and you cut it? Is it pre-cut? What would I need to do to get a Christmas tree home?
We have 2 options. We have the you-cut fields where you go cut your own, and we have the pre-cut tent that has pre-cut trees in there if somebody doesn't want to go out in the field and cut one. We provide saws to people and sleds or tarps for them to drag their tree back. Some of the bigger trees we'll bring back on a trailer for them. It is pretty much a self-serve. You go out, look for your perfect tree, and you'll take your saw and you'll kneel right down. Where was a tree here? You'll cut the saw with the saw. You'll cut the tree off and haul it back up to the baling area.
So could you show us how? Do you have a tree that you could show us
that we've cut
into the baling area?
Sure. I've got a tree right here that has been cut. This is a tree that was already cut. And in order to bale it, we put it through a baler, which wraps it up tighter than it is, which makes it easier to get it on the car and get it in your house and in the stand. So the baling, especially with trees that are nice and chubby, it helps them out big time for handling them for the people once they get them home. So right over here, I'm heading over to the balers. I have 2 different kinds, and we'll stop here for a second. These are the saws we typically use. You can see how big the teeth are. That makes for easier cutting. Different saws have different size teeth depending on what they need to cut. So coming over here, I've got the red baler and the green baler. So the red baler will obviously do the smaller trees. The green baler is for the ones that are much wider. It basically, I put it in the end. This is our netting that it's held on here. This is all the plastic netting. It comes through around and we just pull it through and it wraps it up just like that. And then this baler has a nice little cutting blade on it, so I can cut it, and then it's ready to carry home. Now, what we like to do also is give the tree a fresh cut. So if it's one that's been pre-cut and been cut for a while, it needs a fresh cut within an hour of being cut. And that is to open up the cells on the bottom of the trunk so it can absorb the water that you put it in when you get it home. So we use an electric chainsaw, which is very convenient, and we'll give it a fresh cut. On the bottom. So now that tree has about an hour time to get home and get it in water so it can drink up the water that's in your stand. Now, if you can look at the tree, for those of you who have gotten packages, you can see the number of rings and you can count those rings to tell how old the tree is. And you can also tell how good the year was by the distance between the rings. So if you can see this ring right in here is a very fat ring. That means it was a great growing year. We had a lot of good moisture and good sun, and it was a good year. This is a little narrower, it wasn't bad, but you get down in here, these were a little bit tougher of years. So you can tell, you can go back and say, okay, 3 years ago was a really good growing year for that tree. It was kind of good, fun history to see. So then, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The cradle class, and I think a few other classes are curious. Many folks don't purchase fresh cut Christmas trees or real Christmas trees. What would a real Christmas tree cost if I was going to buy one each Christmas season?
It really depends where you are. Up here in central New York, you can probably spend $50 to $100 on a tree, depending on the size and where you go to cut it. If you're down in New York City, you're going to spend a lot more for a tree down there. They're probably $100 to $200 for a tree. So location is everything and what the market will bear.
And Ms. McCradle's class also wants to know, do you ship your trees to people or to locations like tree lots?
I do not. We sell everything on here is been grown on our farm, or I have brought in a few trees from another New York State local farm because of my deer damage. My inventory is low, so I do bring in a few from another farm, but we only sell what's here. We don't ship anything. Some places do. That is offered, but we do not do it here.
And I've had a couple of students ask about, we're noticing the beautiful snow that's falling in central New York. Do you get a lot of snow, and do the cold temperatures hurt your trees at all?
I wish we got more snow because I love snow. The temperatures don't hurt the trees at all. They're very hardy to probably a negative 30 or 40 degrees. So yeah, the winters have never bothered these trees at all. There are some varieties that don't survive this cold, and so they're not grown here. So we plant what can grow.
Mrs. Drace's 5th grade class wants to know, they're wondering what is the benefits of purchasing a natural Christmas tree.
Well, it is a natural, it is a grown product. Out in the fields, those Christmas trees are oxygenating our environment. They're taking in CO2 and releasing oxygen. So that's constantly helping the environment. They're offering habitat to birds and other animals out in the fields all year long. It is a natural product. When you're done with it, it can be ground up into mulch. This is kind of like the mulch wood chips that can be ground up and put in your gardens, which will break down into soil and nice compost. So that helps your other plants. It can be put into streams for fish habitat. The fish can go in there and hide. It can also be used for birds. You put one out near your bird feeder and the birds will perch in it and to go to your bird feeder or even build nests, even if the tree is dead. So it's a whole natural product versus a man-made product made out of petroleum.
Great question from Julie Pollock. What is the popular size of Christmas trees? Is there a sweet spot?
Well, being that most ceilings in most houses are 8 feet, the sweet spot is about 6 to 7 feet. So that's our most popular size.
And what got you into Christmas tree farming? Miss Ives wants to know, and her class wants to know, how do you get into the business? Why were you interested in Christmas tree farming? And how could students get engaged with the Christmas tree sector?
Well, I have always had a love for growing things, and I've grown numerous things on our farms over the year, but this is a long-term process. Once you start planting, you're not going to get any income off of it for 8 to 10 years when you start cutting, but now it's continuing. So this is a steady income for our farm. How did I get into it? I just love growing things and then got into this. I had training in a greenhouse, was what I went to school for, greenhouse management. But I tended to like things that are growing in the ground that I don't have to tend to every day. So that's why I like things that are growing outside. What was the second part to your question?
How can students get involved with the Christmas tree?
Right. Find a farm and talk to the owners and ask if you can volunteer there to get involved. If they have any job openings at Christmas time, we all need help. I bring on staff for my store. My staff also helps to bale and load trees on cars. So there's always help needed there. During the summertime, if you get into a farm that teaches you how to mow when you're probably the 17, 18-year-olds because of equipment, you can be trained how to use a mower, so you can get involved that way. So, you can be part-time just during Christmas time, or it could turn into a summer job too. So find a farm. If they're close to you, talk to them. They're always open to look for help.
We had a great question about the tree growth. Are there when there's high winds and things like that, or lightning, do those ever damage the tree? And they want to know if you've ever seen a tree struck by lightning, what might it have done to the tree?
I have never had any of my trees struck by lightning, but if they were, they'd probably be toast. High winds, no, I never had any problems. What I see the most, believe it or not, are birds. When that central leader is new, this is the central leader right up here. When it's just coming out, all that growth is very soft. And what happens is the birds perch on it and they'll bend it over so far that they'll sometimes even break them off or permanently make them grow this way. So then we have a weird top and I have to train a new one. So that's the worst I would say. We've had heavy snow loads, have had no damage. Winds don't bother us. And no, I've never been haven't had one struck by lightning, thank goodness. So.
And I think this is a great question from Mrs. Richardson's class. Jackson wants to know, is this your dream job?
Yeah, I'd say so, because I love where I live. I love going out and working outside. I'm happy playing with plants of any kind. So I also, at our wedding venue, I have extensive gardens down there. I love gardening, perennial gardening with flowers. So it's all, I'd rather be outside than inside.
So you mentioned now farming is a business and you have to make a living. And you mentioned that there are ups and downs, good seasons and bad seasons. Are there things a farmer can do other than just growing one crop to be able to kind of spread out that risk? Are there other things that you might do?
Yes, we have diversified here on the farm. The Christmas trees bring in our income in really in December. Our apple orchard brings in income in September and October. We have a wedding venue. I don't know if you want to pan over to that barn we built 6 years ago as a venue. We have a lot of weddings there, as well as we host it for parties. That has been a great income to the property. So you need to diversify, do a couple, 2, 3, 4 different things. So if you have a bad year in one, the others can pick up the slack. So that's what we've done.
Now, do you have any animals on your farm?
I do. I have some horses, some donkeys. I also have alpacas here on the farm. This is our tent where we keep the pre-cut trees. I'll give you a little peek in there. We raise alpacas here on the farm, and alpacas we use for their fur. We shear them every year, and we use that fur to get made into clothing. These are a couple of my boys are up here for the day. This is Dante and Scout. The snow and the cold does not bother them one bit because their fur, oh, he's giving you kisses. Their fur keeps them incredibly warm. We shear them once a year in May. And this is a picture here of what Dante looked like in May before shearing. And that's what he looked like after shearing. So they have a lot of fur on them.
Now, I have never seen a herd of alpacas in New York State, so I do not think that they're a native animal. Are these animals from New York, or do they come from another region?
They come from Peru. South America is where they originated from. They've been in the States since pretty much the late 80s. And it's like any other business. It's gone way up and then it's tapered down a bit. But I just love their fiber. I love the clothing that's made out of their fiber so much that I kind of specialize that in my little Christmas store that I have. And I have socks. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I have a couple great questions, or I have a great question about shearing. What is shearing? You've mentioned it. You've sheared Christmas trees. Now you've mentioned shearing alpacas. What is shearing?
Shearing is cutting. Okay, shearing means to cut. Shearing a Christmas tree is shaping that. Shearing the animals, there's a certain set of clippers. It does not hurt them, and it just basically shaves them. If you Google shearing a lamb or shearing a sheep, you can see a video of that. It's just like a hair cutter that will cut off your hair, like if you shave off a man's beard, but we do it the whole body. So they get a complete shear, and it makes them much more comfortable and cooler for the summertime. And then they grow it all back by the following year.
Being a reading teacher and somebody who loves books, Julia asked a great question. She wants to know, would you ever be interested in writing a book about your life as a Christmas tree farmer? I think it would be a great children's book.
I guess I'd have to think about that and see if I can get the time to do it.
I love that. So you mentioned getting products from your different parts of your farm. You mentioned shearing trees, so that means you would have branches laying around. Yep. You'd think that those would just become compost or go in a bundle and be burnt. You mentioned getting wool from your alpacas. Do you do anything with all these things?
Let's go into my little store that I built a number of years back, just for making wreaths with the branches that come off of the tree that we can't use. I cut into little pieces and I make wreaths out of them. This one's a candy cane shaped one. This is a round one, and I make big ones. Unfortunately, I sold my 2 big ones this morning. But we make the wreaths out of the clippings that we have. Come on in.
And this is a very interesting building. It looks round. Can you tell us about what this might have been?
It is an octagon building and was built on a round silo foundation that used to be on the farm before we bought it. The silo was gone, but I was left with a big round concrete slab. And I figured that was the most efficient use of space, is to build an octagon building. So that's what we did.
So here, I love it.
Yeah. So here are all of our little clippings that we get. I cut them into these are the usable pieces. And this is what's called a wreath ring. You can see all the wire pieces here. And this is a table I put together with a clamp. I have a pedal down here that when I step on this, it squeezes it. So I take the wreath ring, I place it in between the clamps. I get a nice bundle of greens. And the key is to making it consistent. And now here I mix in different stuff. I've got some white pine. I'll put some of that in. And this is a juniper I have growing down in my landscape. It's just a little different texture. So I'll put a little bit of that with it. I'll put it in here. And then I'll step on my pedal. And you see how the clamps are going down? And it squeezes it nice and tight and holds it. So then I do that all the way around until I have made a wreath. And then I can decorate it with different kinds of bows or decorations. I put pine cones on some. So it's kind of an artsy way to fancy some wreaths up. Some people like a plain wreath and other people like a decorated wreath.
Now, were all those harvested there on your farm?
Yes, they were. We try not to let anything go to waste if we can use it.
Thinking of
I'm a big recycler.
Thinking of our students in classrooms, would this be something they could possibly do in the classroom, maybe with pipe cleaners and things like that, making a wreath?
Make a wreath? Maybe I would suggest getting a stiff ring, and then they could use pipe cleaners to attach it to the ring. You can certainly try it.
Yeah.
Another thing we've done, which might be easier if you got a bunch of branches that are all kind of the same like this, you could take a couple of them together and just tie them together with a bow in the middle, and you can hang that right on your wall. That's called a swag.
I like
so that would be very easy.
Now, do you ever offer classes on wreath making at your shop?
I have not.
Oh, I think we're coming up with a lot of great ideas for you.
Oh boy, oh boy.
So Mary Moran wants to know, what's the biggest wreath you've ever made?
Well, I've used this wreath ring to make rings in a couple of them in the past. This makes a huge wreath and it's super heavy, but I've done this is my biggest ring. It's about 40 inches across. So it makes a 48-inch wreath once it's all done.
And I think all the students want to know, how much does a wreath cost?
Well, one like this undecorated is about $25. And I've got a couple different sizes. One of these guys is probably going to be about $120 because it uses a lot of greens.
And those are all things that were recycled that would be considered waste. So we would consider that upcycling.
Yep.
What other kind of things you mentioned that you have alpaca fur and that's harvested. Do you use that there at your shop, or you just send that away?
Well, I do send it away. I've got, this is some fur that as it comes off the animal, that's what it looks like once we shear them. I do send some of it to get made into yarn. And this is all yarn that is made directly from my alpacas. You can have different weights of yarn, meaning the size of the strand is different thickness. So this is all from my guys. And then I do send some of my yarn or my fiber to what's called a fiber pool, which is a company that gets a lot of farms fiber together and they make stuff with it. And then I buy products back. So for example, I've got gloves and I've got socks and scarves and hats that all come, some of them come from that company. And then I buy some stuff that comes from Peru, which is where the alpacas originated from. So everything in my store, almost everything in my store is alpaca made. I have a few other side products like candles that my daughter makes. So we like to stay local products here.
So around the world, I know many different types of livestock. They're utilized for their wool. So goats and camels, sheep, and now alpacas. How might alpaca wool be different than those other animals?
Alpaca is warmer than wool, sheep wool. It's very soft. It's not itchy. Sheep's wool is very itchy. It's very breathable. And so like for socks, will breathe very well and keep your feet dry in the summertime. I wear them year round for the warmth in the winter and the breathing in the summer. So I feel it's better than wool, even merino wool, which is one of the best wools there is. I feel alpaca is better. And I love the animals.
Mrs. Shell's class wants to know, do you have any family members that help you on the farm? And that's from
Oh
Toby.
yeah, I do. I have three children who have all grown up here on the farm. They've all been my mowing people, planting people. They've helped at Christmas time to sell trees, so they've all been very involved.
And this is a great question from Mrs. Reed's second grade class, and I'm very curious about your answer. When um, when shearing around the animal's face, how do you do that? They're really concerned about the alpaca's eyes. Do you cut around their eyes, or do you just leave that area alone?
We only trim their facial hair down about halfway, and we hold their head, we secure their head very still, because the last thing we want to do is have somebody hurt. So they are held down secure so they can't jerk and move. And we can get a whole alpaca. I don't do it myself. I bring in a guy who's really good and trained at this because the clippers are very big. But he can completely shear an alpaca in about 3 minutes. So it's quick, it's done, and then they're done for the year. So we're very concerned with for safety of any animal.
Miss Donovan's class wants to know, going back to the Christmas trees, about how far apart do they need to be planted?
Mine are planted 7 feet apart, and each row is 8 feet apart. So some farms will tighten them up and do 6 by 6. It makes shearing, in my opinion, it makes shearing and mowing pretty difficult when they get to be a big size. So I spread them out a little bit more, but it's typically 6 or 7 by 7.
And it looks like there are a lot of young people out there that are interested in possibly becoming Christmas tree farmers. And I think they might want to start a little Christmas tree farm in their at their house. So how could they go about planting a Christmas tree? Where would they even find a Christmas tree sapling to plant in their yard?
As baby trees, start small, don't get too many at first. There are different sites. If you Google Christmas tree seedlings, there are a variety of companies out there that grow and sell seedlings. You can get some through the state, has a program. I believe it's it might be the Saratoga Nursery for the state. You can buy seedlings from them, usually in bundles of at least 25. So don't plan on getting one or two. You're going to have to get 25 or 50 or 75. And find a site that they can grow on and lay it out so they have plenty of room to grow, because they look small and they're cute when they're 3 or 4 foot high, but these guys are going to get bigger. So you need to use your 7 by 7 or 6 by 6 spacing on them.
And that sounds like a great project the teacher could do at school. Maybe if they had an open area, they could maybe go out with the students each year and plant a Christmas tree. And after 5 or 6 years, as students progress, they'll have their own forest and might bring that community together. So that's
right.
an awesome idea. I love that. Love starting trees with young folks. I do have an awesome question. Are animals, from Mrs. Klein's MECS third, are animals afraid to be sheared?
The first time we do it, they usually put up a little bit of a fuss, but once they realize it, every year after that, they're like, all right, we'll do it, get us done. So, it's mostly because they just don't know it's something new at first. But once we do it one year, then the next year's they're fine.
And I'm sure those animals would be pretty hot. So they're probably excited to get that winter coat off.
Yeah, they're very warm underneath when we shear them. You can feel that heat coming off their body, so they're very comfortable afterwards.
Well, with that, we're here at the end of our field trip. We're so excited. Time flew by. It's such an exciting field trip. So thank you, Julie, so much
Awesome.
for
You're very
having
welcome.
us. what an awesome experience. If educators are in the area and they possibly want to do a field trip with you, would you ever be open to having students at your farm?
Absolutely. Call me. We'll set something up. Just not during the weekend for Christmas time.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll have them call you during planting time, and you'll have lots of
Yeah,
helpers help you get those trees
yeah,
planted. Well, thank you
that'd be
so
awesome.
much. We want to say happy holidays to all those classrooms out there who joined us. And thank you so much, Julie. We hope that you have a wonderful holiday season, both for your
Thank you.
farm and with your family.
Thank you. And I hope you all do too.
Thank you so much.